So I just started devouring information, as I know many of you have out here when something in your life has changed, about trying to get to like the real truth of what's going on with our bodies and health and preventing disease or curing disease, and was lucky enough to kind of train, I don't know if I say with, but train at their programs and be around some of the physicians who are just, have been gone before me decades and decades before. People like Dr. McDougall, Dr. Campbell, and Dr. Esselstyn mostly. So those are my heroes. Those are the people that I credit a lot of the things that I've become passionate about too. Today, though, we're going to specifically talk about dairy. So there are, I was just mentioning actually to Rich, one of the guys here, so there's a million ways to attack this. So plant-based diet or healthy vegan diet, I would say, because there's a lot of vegan junk food, right? And Oreo is actually vegan, nothing in it, but that's not good for you. So whatever you want to call it doesn't matter to me. But there's a lot of ways to attack that for reasons why people might get passionate. People might be passionate because of just health reasons. People might be passionate for environmental reasons, animal reasons, religious reasons. There's a lot of reasons people come in. Or they might discover that the disease they have is particularly affected by eggs or something like that. It doesn't matter to me what inspires you to jump into this kind of a lifestyle, but I can tell you it is the healthiest thing you could do for your body by far. Okay, so my first question, I'm going to make it a little bit interactive today as well. So my first question is, does anybody feel that they are addicted to cheese at any point in their life? Okay, this is the first hand I saw go up. So you are going to get The Cheese Trap by Dr. Bernard. I don't know if you've read it. Okay, good. If you haven't read it, please read it. And once you do, please pass it on to someone else who might want it. Dr. Bernard is also amazing in his education in this kind of lifestyle and teaching patients in the general population. And his book, The Cheese Trap, is one of his newest ones, and it is phenomenal. I recently reread it to freshen up for talking today, and it's just awesome. So, and there's more too, so if you're paying attention, maybe you'll get one. Okay, so what's the big deal about dairy? And can everyone hear me? Can you hear me back there? Okay, good. So the first thing, I do have this little handout. It's just so that you can take it home because I didn't have anything else, like slides or anything today. So there's a million reasons not to do any dairy product. And when I say dairy product, it can be anything. So milk. Milk and cheese are the most two common things that are in our diets, but also yogurts, butter, I mean anything that comes from processing the milk of a cow usually, but there's also people who do goat, things like that, any animal milk. So first of all, it is very high in fat and calories. So one of America and the Western world's biggest problems right now is simply just overweight and obesity. So anything that's really high in fat and high in calories is something we need to be careful with. So that just right there is an easy thing that it contributes to. But also diabetes, hypertension, cancer. Now dairy, if you think of milk, the design, what was milk designed? Cow's milk. A baby cow to grow very fast in its infant stage, specifically. So I don't know if you would like to grow as fast as a cow does, but you probably have noticed that you might have as you've gotten older, that maybe you have grown faster than you wanted to. But that it's designed to do that. It's designed to fatten something up. And I think if I remember right, maybe a calf quadruples in its size. I don't remember if that's right, in a certain period of time. I think it's like 60 days or something like that. Don't quote me on the number. Whereas it takes a human like 6 months to do that much growth. So there's no doubt that it puts on the pounds very quickly. Another thing is it's really high in salt. So people don't think of that a lot. But dairy, cheese has to be processed and has to be made in a way that it can stay fresh. Well, fresh, but stay so it doesn't go bad, be preserved. And the salt is a large part of that process. If you've ever been or learned about the cheese process, which actually Bernard talks about in his book, but some people do it on a trip maybe in Europe. They might go to some cheese making facility. You see that salt is a huge part of it. So we know that salt is not great for our diet. You may not know why, but it absolutely contributes to hypertension, to strokes, to any sort of cardiovascular disease, as you would call it. So salt's a really big deal. I did write it on here, but I don't know if a lot of people think about high salt things, and I think of soup is the first thing they think of. So an ounce of cheddar cheese is twice the amount of sodium as an ounce of tomato soup. So, I mean, it's really, you'd be better having the tomato soup than having the cheddar cheese. So that's another thing, it's high in salt. Another thing, it's highly processed and highly concentrated. So one thing that I love to focus on and teach is whole foods is the beginning of what I actually describe if I'm talking to someone about what I think is the best way to eat and live, and that's whole food, plant-based. And a whole food is something that's not processed. It's something that's closest to its original form. Cheese is not close to its original form, not even close. It's very highly processed from the cow's milk. I don't even know the details of how they do it, but all the fat they take, then they add the salt and the cultures they add in, and they have to let it grow and cure it. It is a highly processed thing, so if you're trying to eat a whole foods diet and that's important to you, cheese absolutely should never be in it. It's very processed. Obviously, a cow's milk is less processed than the actual cheese. It's still not good for you, but it's less processed. The cheese is highly processed. It takes all the fat, all the animal protein, and concentrates it down into this block of cheese. Okay. What else on here? Animal protein. So animal protein itself, just in that form, has been a culprit in hypertension. It has contributed to autoimmune diseases, to cancers. That's something that Dr. Campbell is very passionate about, is animal protein specifically, and he watched it make cancers grow. So again, if you're going to highly process it, concentrate down all this animal protein and eat it in a little block of cheddar, it's got a lot of animal protein in there. It's very bad for you. Okay, it's full of hormones. So does anybody think hormones of another animal is a good thing? I know that hormone-free things are becoming very popular and trendy. And on one hand, I love that and I support that because it's not smart or healthy for us to be taking in hormones of another animal. And there's no doubt that the way our children are growing is being affected by hormones. The way that our older women are going through menopause, the way that our young women are having things like endometriosis, these things are very much affected by the fact that every glass of milk, every bite of cheese, every scoop of yogurt you have has hormones in it. It doesn't mean that even the industry put them in it. It means the mom cow had to make hormones to stimulate milk. Right? When a female human is pregnant, her hormones are high, right? Anyone been pregnant in here? They know hormones are high. So hormones are high when you're pregnant for a lot of reasons, and one is to stimulate milk. And then we take that milk, and actually the dairy industry wanted to put hormone-free stamp on some of their products. And thankfully, that's one of the good things that the government did do, and they said you can't do that because that's a lie. I mean, that is just straight out a lie. Yes, you may not have added hormones, growth hormones to this or that type of cow, but that is not a hormone-free product. That is the product of hormones increasing in a female cow. So hormones is a big thing to be careful of. It's also addicted, as you were nice to confess. It's true, though. We do get addicted. Not only is it highly processed and highly concentrated, so those are the things that taste so good because they're like superfoods, because they have so much like flavor to us or attraction, but also it literally has something called the casomorphin. You can look it up on Wikipedia. I'm not making it up, but it's like a very, very subtle light opioid. I'm not saying it's as powerful as a narcotic medicine, it's not, but it is one of the things that our body has some natural opioids because it's something, it wants to reward us to do good things. So the reason that dairy products would have that, what do you guys think? What would be the reason? That's true. Our body would want to continue to seek out foods when we didn't have food naturally available to us before all the industry that the revolution we're living in now. Yeah, what else? Like why would milk be addictive? For the calf. So the calf drinks it. So the calf keeps coming back because that calf needs to have the want to come back to the mom to get more milk. So it is naturally addictive. Absolutely, there's no doubt. So there is a thing that's called casomorphins, and it does come across, of course, in our milk and our cheese because the intent was for it to attract the baby cow to come back for more. It also has no fiber. So this is my only one that says what does it not have, but fiber is huge. Fiber is not found in animal products. Fiber is kind of the natural structure to the plant-based products that we eat. It's essential to eating healthy. It keeps our bowel movements regular, which I know is taboo in a restaurant to be talking about, but it does. It keeps our bowel movements regular. And increasing fiber in your diet decreases your risk of colon cancer. Because if you don't have fiber and you have all these other bad things in your diet and you're constipated all the time, your risk of diverticulosis and colon cancer increases. And that is a fact. And actually, that is my favorite fact because that's the first fact I learned in med school where I just remember being like, and I was looking around, I was like, did you guys hear that? Like they just told us that animal protein causes colon cancer. I'm like, does nobody else cares? Like what? Like why? Am I the only one? But that was the first fact, and I wrote it down vigorously, and I just started this special notebook that had things that I was being taught by my teachers that linked back to a plant-based diet, and that was the first one, was that animal protein contributes to colon cancer. It's a known contributor, and the increasing the fiber in your diet helps that. It actually binds up the animal protein, so you excrete it instead of it getting into your body. So the solution that I was told was to eat more fiber, and I thought, well, can't you just not eat the animal protein? I mean, if it binds up the animal protein so you get rid of it, why not just not eat the animal protein? But fiber is also great for a lot of things, but also just don't eat the animal protein. Then you won't have that risk. So those are some of the biggest things that stick out to me whenever I think about dairy. One of the other things I will say that I was mentioning to someone beforehand is one of my favorite people in the whole world, like I said, is Dr. McDougall, who's been teaching on this a long time. And when I went out to learn from him, I will never forget that he said he is a very black and white person. He's kind of an all or nothing person. You know, you live this way or you don't. And he wants to encourage you to do it because he knows it's the best for you. He's going to save your life and so many other impact so many other things in our world. And he said, and he never answers this kind of question, but he said, if there's only one thing you do, actually give up the dairy. He said, if you can't do the meat or you can't do the this or the that, he said, if there's one thing you do, give up the dairy. And that was really powerful to me because the dairy was the harder thing for me. It was easier to give up the meat. It wasn't as addictive, and obviously because other things we talked about, but it was harder to give up the cheese. And he said it's the more important thing. So that was really powerful to me. Any questions right off the bat here? And I have a few other things to go over, but yeah. Okay, great. Welcome. Yeah. Yeah. Great question. So she asked about cashew cheese and what is that like? So I will say, first of all, it is a great substitute, especially for someone who is trying to transition away. Some people are cold turkey people. If you're cold turkey, please do it. Just run away from animal products and go to whole plant-based. But if you're not and you need it more stepwise, it's a good transition because it's really delightful and really tasty. I will say it's very high in fat still, and so I'd be careful, if especially if you have issues with obesity, with diabetes, with hypertension, things like that. So it's a very high fat plant product. It's the oils in it. Yep. The nuts and the oils are very high in fat. And they can damage your vessel walls. So they are something to be careful in. If you're going to go plant-based, you don't want to substitute with only those things. Remember, it should be a delicacy, it should be a treat, it should be an exception, not slathered over everything. Okay, great question. I've had it myself, it's delightful. Anything else?
I'm Dave. I had a doctor's appointment recently, and one of the things, they had just changed doctors. I'm at the VA for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we talked about was diet, and when we talked about it, she seemed concerned that I was plant-based, and wanted to make sure I got blood work soon to make sure that I'm getting all the nutrition I need.
Yeah.
And I've gotten that response from medical professionals a lot. And I've also, and just in general, a friend of mine was like, are you sure you're getting enough protein? And then my response to that is, are you sure you're getting enough fat?
Yeah.
And he's like, it's not the same thing. And I'm like, it kind of is. So, but is there a better way, a way to respond that can reassure people in both medical professions and just general people that I'm not crazy?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So if you guys didn't hear, his question was his physician, his personal physician, kind of thinks he's very abnormal and maybe even unhealthy and risking his health by being plant-based, vegan, whatever you choose to call it. It is a hard line to toe. I would say a large majority of the physicians in America have no clue about the information that I'm discussing because number one, nutrition's not really taught in medical school. I had half an hour on diet and lifestyle, literally. The little facts I told you I wrote down were in other classes, but they weren't focusing on diet. They were just noting little, let's put it this way, they're noting separate, what they thought were separate things that contributed to certain diseases, whereas diet actually brings it all together. It's actually what Dr. Campbell's book Whole is about. It's really wonderful, and actually for the dietary people here, Campbell's book Whole is amazing. You can't just pick one thing, but that's what physicians do, right? And I'm a physician, that's okay, but we do, right? Your blood pressure's high, take this pill. Okay, that's an easier fix. I'm not saying every physician does that. And I will say, to advocate for the physicians, is that the majority of our patients don't want to change. They don't. The majority of the Americans want to sit at home, they want to order their pizza, and they don't want to get off the couch. So it's a majority, so they get jaded, and it's this bad cycle. So we're not educated, physicians aren't educated. But for yourself, I would say you're at the VA, which I think is a wonderful place. I've worked there myself, this specific one in Cincinnati. So you're gonna have only a certain selection. You're not gonna be able to necessarily go in the whole community. So first of all, I would say you could try to find someone who's at least open and accepting of that lifestyle and not as kind of judgmental and making you feel bad about yourself. And then I would say just continue to live the healthiest life you can and just prove them wrong. I'm happy to help you consult on anything. There's the tiniest amount of lab work you would even need, and I'm sure yours is fine, as they all are. So, but good question, and that's a hard thing, and I understand. That's hard in our country right now. Other questions people have? Yeah?
Can you address the big question that everybody asks, is like, how do you get your calcium? What was it gonna fall apart?
Oh yeah.
I'm recording, so I want to hear your question.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, can you address the question that everybody asks when you say you're not drinking milk, you're not eating dairy, like, well, how do you get your calcium? And
Yeah.
how about your bones?
Yeah. It's interesting because my mind just got. Yeah, I'll repeat it since they may have heard on the video, but they didn't hear it in the back. The question is, how do we respond to the question of how are you getting your calcium and how are your bones going to stay strong, right? So it's funny because I'm trying to stay really positive, but as soon as you said that, I got really cynical in my mind because the problem is, I would wonder in your personal life, I'm curious, in mine as well, what point in your life did you learn that calcium from milk meant strong bones? Right? Yeah, exactly. So it's from the advertising decades ago, and it's from the dairy industry. I'm gonna be honest, it's from the dairy industry. So that is not truth, unfortunately, and actually all of the population studies show that the higher the milk consumption in a country, the worse the osteoporosis. So the more milk you drink, the worse your bones are gonna be. The theories are, I don't know if this is necessarily a proof, but the theories are that the animal protein is so acidic that it actually leaches out some base from your bones and makes them more brittle. No matter how much calcium you dump in there, it's not gonna just automatically go into the bones. And calcium plus bones doesn't just mean strength. You have to have a whole correct setting, right? You have to have vitamin D, which where do we get vitamin D from? The sun, not pills actually, but we get it from the sun. An adequate, appropriate amount of sunshine is where we get it. So the hard part is, unfortunately, there's just not truth to that. Your bones are 100% fine on a plant-based diet. The best thing you can do for your bones is to go for walks, go on stairs, do some light weight-bearing activities. And if you eat a plant-based diet, that's pretty alkaline, so not as acidic, and that's going to be better for your bones than dumping in the calcium. Okay, does that help? And you do have, it's a good question. I want to say in the back of your page, I included something that Julie and I have talked about. She wanted me to update recently as we've talked, and this is a very common question I get. And this is about all of the milks and which milk should I choose. So it's a very common question. So I'm going to actually start at the bottom really quick and say, just remember, you need this milk, any sort of alternate milk, is to be used as an exception, as a treat, maybe in cooking, in baking. You never need to drink a glass of milk. You can if you want to, if it be a plant-based milk, whatever you're choosing, but you don't need to, right? So you don't even have to substitute. You could become plant-based, not choose a plant-based milk, and be completely healthy. But there are lots of recipes that people want. Maybe they do like it over their oatmeal or whatever in the mornings, and so you can choose one, but you don't have to. You can choose none as well. So does anyone know what I'm going to say, other than the cow's milk, is my least favorite of the plant-based milks? Coconut. Why did you say coconut?
High fat.
It's so high in fat. So if you hear one thing from McDougall, it says stop the dairy. If you hear one thing from me, do not believe the hype about coconut. It's driven by advertising and food industry. It's in everything now, right? Coconut milk, coconut oil, coconut water, coconut flour, coconut in your lotion, coconut in your shampoo. It's because someone, the food industry, decided to use the oil, and then we had all these byproducts, so it had to be used, and now it's in everything. Coconut is a wonderful flavor. I like it. A couple flakes on maybe the top of some dessert or something that someone made at, at my house or whatever, wherever I am, is fine. But coconut is one of the unfortunate plant-based products that's very high in fat. It's unfortunate. I wish it wasn't. I wish every single plant-based item was perfect, but it's very high in fat. So it's something to be very careful of. And it has a lot of saturated fat specifically, so even more damaging than just high in fat. Does anyone know another really high in fat plant-based product? Avocado. That's the other one that I think of. I like avocados, also creamy, delightful to add on. But if you think eating like avocado, coconut oil toast is going to like save your life, it's actually not. Like just go back to something more basic because that's actually pretty damaging. So, and then we have unfortunately all these people eating the standard American diet, throwing avocado and coconut oil on everything, and they're just making everything worse. But anyway, so coconut milk of the plant-based ones is one that I would avoid, which is why, and here you can see, okay, it's only 45 total calories per cup, which seems very low, which is great. However, 41 of those calories are from fat. So if you're struggling with weight loss, definitely avoid that. And if you see right over to the right, it has the same amount of saturated fat than the cow's milk portions, okay? As we go down, there's just a few things to note, nothing big, but soy milk compared to almond, we have both in our household. Personally, if you care to know, soy milk is a little sweeter, a little higher in calorie. A lot of the products over the counter or over the shelf in the grocery store have a little more sugar in them. Again, it's maybe better if you're making a dessert for a treat or something. Almond milk ranks pretty darn good, low in calorie, low in fat, good option. Cashew milk, not so bad either, low in calories. The percentage of fat is higher than almond. But the summary, basically, I'm going to read a few of these sentences down here. So let's see here. The summary is that, that's my favorite one to say. Okay, there is no perfect plant-based milk. Choose a plant-based milk that tastes good for you. Because a lot of people want to harp on all these differences. Not one of them is perfect. I wouldn't say that everybody has to do almond milk, that's the only option. Because if you hate almond milk and you won't eat oatmeal because I said almond milk, that's not good, okay? Oat milk is great and a lot of people like it. Rice milk happens to be the one that tastes the closest to cow's milk, so a lot of people like that as a transition food. It works really well for people that are like, I cannot give up my cereal and milk or whatever it may be. It has a little bit of oil in it. I don't love that, but just a little bit. So there's a lot of nitty-gritty details on here. If you like the details, they're in that chart. And you can read the facts I put there at the bottom, but hopefully that's helpful to you about the alternative milks. Other questions? Yeah.
What
What is the relationship between calcium and vitamin K? Do you need a couple foods with vitamin K when you're eating calcium?
Okay, great question. I'm going to skim over that a little bit. So his question was about the relationship between calcium and vitamin K. So I do happen to know that you're studying a little diet stuff. So there's a lot of nitty-gritty details. There are a lot of things that work together well, and they're buddies in our body. If you put this one thing, let's say calcium, and you got vitamin K, and then it absorbs better. Okay, is kind of what he's getting to. So there are a million things actually in our bodies that work that way physiologically. I will say though, outside of your studies, everybody else, a whole foods plant-based diet is going to do it for you. You never have to worry about your vitamin K. You never have to worry about your calcium. Did you know there's calcium in broccoli? There's calcium in broccoli. Why has nobody ever raised their hand and said, well, how much broccoli am I allowed to have? I can't have too much, can I? You cannot have too much broccoli, okay? You can have plenty of broccoli, and there's calcium in it. All of the right things happen to be in the whole foods plant-based diet, and you're not going to be deficient in anything. I will say with the notable exception that people know of vitamin B12, which is largely because our food is so clean now, which sounds funny because there's a lot it has to improve on, but our produce is more washed than it used to be. We don't actually grab it out of the garden as much anymore. And the dirt used to have bacteria in it, which had the vitamin B12. The animal foods do have more B12 because they ruminate it in their stomach, and so they have it. It's actually from bacteria. So the one thing I personally recommend is vitamin B12. You need a very low amount with your diet. Other than that, the whole food plant-based diet is going to get all your vitamin K, all your calcium, everything else that you need. So, time for one or two more questions, and then if anyone else wants to add anything. Yeah.
What about allergies?
What about allergies? Yeah, it's a good question. I did kind of skim over that. So in the dairy is very much associated with autoimmune diseases. There is truth to that. I did learn that in medical school. It doesn't mean that every person that has an autoimmune disease can stop dairy and they'll cure themselves. A lot of people can, but it doesn't mean that it's 100%. But yes, people, often kids, but yes, adults as well, often kids that are eating a lot of dairy just have horrible ear infections and allergies and stopped up sinuses and thick mucus and horrible asthma. And as soon as they get rid of the dairy, that starts to improve for themselves. First of all, one thing, their body starts to heal themselves by getting the foods it needs and wants. But the animal protein, very specifically, we're animals, right? So animal protein of a cow actually can kind of look similar to our animal protein. And so when it looks really similar and we take in this thing, it's like, that's really similar to Betsy, but it's not the exact same, so I'm gonna attack it. So we have these antibodies that kind of go crazy, and that's basically the essence of an autoimmune disease. There is a lot of linkage to things like diabetes, type 1 diabetes. The younger kids that are getting that, there's a lot of linkage again to dairy. I'm not going to say it's one for one that it's the only thing that causes it, but there's a lot of linkage. And allergies is a big one. Autoimmune skin diseases is a big one. Arthritis, joint, especially autoimmune things like rheumatoid arthritis, very strongly linked. Those are the main ones that come to my mind. So, any other burning questions? Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question.
Okay.
So I read a lot because I'm starting to go through menopause.
Okay.
And
yeah,
everyone's like, don't do soy, don't do soy.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
gonna mess up your hormones.
So she's asking about like menopause and soy. Did you want to add something to that? No. Oh. Yeah, she's asking about menopause, but also soy. So everyone's kind of, alerting her, be careful with soy. What I can say, the easiest answer is it's at least neutral, okay? There are studies that can say that soy can have some negative effects on our body, but that is true about everything, no matter how you design the study. Okay, I can make anything look really bad, and that's unfortunately how the industries do it, and how they can make, for example, dairy to look so good for your bones is because they can do one study and fix it a certain way to make it look that way. So unfortunately, even our evidence is hard to interpret and believe because even our evidence isn't real evidence. It's actually like fake news, right? It's like the new term that we use. It's fake evidence. So I would say at a minimum, all the experts that I learned from say it's at least neutral. Some studies show, okay, maybe there's too much estrogen, maybe it's affecting this or that. Most of those studies were at ungodly amounts that nobody consumes, and you can do that in anything. But most of the studies, the majority of the studies show that it only helps. That the people that eat a lot of soy in their diet are having wonderfully long lives with not the consequences such as breast cancers or other things that people are mentioning. So even for a breast cancer patient, I would say soy is completely safe, except for one thing. Does anyone know something in soy that I might be really worried about? What'd you say? Like GMOs, okay. Some else, ground up. Okay, so ground up. So what that is, the ground up, that's actually called soy protein isolate. So that's actually a highly processed, concentrated version of soy. Okay, so if you go become plant-based and you eat everything that's fake soy, soy burgers, soy ground up crumbles, soy milks, tofu and this, and you do everything that's soy. Now you are eating a diet that's not whole foods plant-based, it's soy. You're eating a soy diet. And that is unfortunately what a lot of people do when they just substitute. So the safest soy products, actually soy milk is safe. Of course, soybeans and edamame are pretty safe. Anything that you can picture a 100-year-old Japanese woman making in her country kitchen, okay? Tofu actually is made very simply. So tofu actually is one and tempeh is one. Those are the most common, least processed of the soy products. Because it does get kind of hard to know what's processed and what's not. Because soy or tofu doesn't actually look like a soybean, but it's very minimally processed and women made it in their kitchen 100 years ago. Or men. Does that help? Okay.
So just to clarify.
Yeah.
Tofu cakes are great. Boca burgers not so much.
Yeah. To clarify, he said what'd you say? Tofu cakes.
Like you buy in the store.
Oh yeah, the tofu chunk, the pound, safe. Soy burger not. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, Boca burger or the variety.
Exactly.
Processed.
Exactly. So anything that's more processed. So here's the thing, about 5 years ago, the fastest growing food part in the food industry, so it was like maybe 10 or 15 years, it was gluten, right? Let's put on the front of it, it's an apple, gluten-free. Well, duh, it's an apple. But it would sell faster, right? So high protein, about 5 years ago, became the highest, kind of fastest growing sector in the food industry because they could take anything, throw a little soy protein isolate in it and say it's high in protein. That actually does not mean it's safe, and it actually means it's very dangerous. And I would be very cautious with that. So avoid things that rave that they're high in protein, because you're not going to be protein deficient if you're eating whole foods plant-based. But yes, if you look on the back of that package, you look at that ingredient list, and you see something that's something protein isolate or soy protein isolate, put it back. It's too far from its original source, and go grab an apple. Yeah. Well, I'd rather you eat a pea. I would. Okay. Yeah, same thing. Any other questions? Yeah. Okay, one more. That's great. That's fine. That's wonderful.
Here's a question that I got.
Oh, he's gonna kind of come over. It's okay.
I wasn't sure how to answer this question. Somebody said to me, well, wait a minute. People have been drinking milk forever. Why is it suddenly bad? How would you answer that?
It depends on how they define forever. Oh, yes, sorry. She said, recently someone said, well, wait a minute, I feel like people have been drinking milk forever, so why is it suddenly bad? A couple quick answers, and then you could go into that very detailed for a long time. First of all, they've not been drinking it forever, and if you look at large populations, most of the populations don't drink milk. We live in I'm looking at this room right now, and I'm sorry, it's a very Caucasian, white, probably, I don't know how much you make, middle class environment, okay? Did you know that 95% of Asian Americans are lactose intolerant? 95%, okay? But they're being told by our government that they should be taking dairy. That's should be wrong that that's in the food pyramid. 95% of them, their bodies were designed to not take it. Our bodies, because of our lineage, being that I'm some random European Caucasian mix, There was multiple lineages that came from dairy farms in Europe and Germany or whatever that, yes, my lineage has been taking milk for a long time. That's true. That's why it does better in my body. What percent do you guys think of African Americans? Percent. 75% of African Americans and Native Americans are lactose intolerant in America, but they're told by our government that they should drink milk, right? So people have not been drinking milk. And then the other answer is, even if maybe they were in this lineage or in this culture, the amount of, I would say not really milk, of cheese that is being injected into our food is terrible. One thing I didn't get into is the one of those lines, I forgot it, I must have skipped it, about the subsidies and the marketing and the advertising for dairy. They are literally injecting more cheese into the food industry. Have you seen the commercial, right, for the cheese pizza that now we got cheese in the crust? That was because the dairy industry made too much cheese, the government bought it to buy them out, and then sold it to the fast food industry. That's like literally why. The Trees Trap talks about it, if you want to know the details. It's all over. It's not a secret. It's public knowledge. So I will say that also the amount of dairy in our diet is being increased, and that's largely because of advertising. To help. Okay, last question. And then we'll break, and anyone else can ask questions as well while we're mingling. And then Julie will say a few things. Go ahead.
So, like Canada, they cut out dairy from their pyramid and everything.
Oh my gosh, go Canada! Oh,
Like,
they're amazing.
I don't know how the subsidies are up there. But
Yeah.
Do you think like that would be
I'll repeat it.
a possibility?
Oh my God, I would love to dream that. So she said she knows that Canada recently took dairy products out of their food pyramid. And that's when I said, go Canada, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I wish that I lived in a world where America could do that. So I'm gonna hope and believe that it can happen.
You should look up their food pyramid because it's really incredible. It has
Yeah.
a diverse like array of so many different kinds of food. where
That's
ours
awesome.
is, like,
Yeah.
color, and then words.
Yeah,
It like provides so much detail for
that's great. Good, that's awesome. Thank you so much, yeah. All right, Julie's gonna say a few things and then I will hang around for a little bit. You guys are amazing. Thanks for being here. Yes.
Before we wrap up, just a couple notes, tidbits that I was thinking of. One, when you're cooking, and if you want a coconut flavor in your food, what you can do to substitute coconut milk is use one of the other plant-based milks and use a little coconut extract to get the flavor. You can get organic coconut extract on Amazon or other places. So it's an easy way, and you totally avoid the fat, but you get the flavor. Second of all, the plant-based milks, like she said, I love this story because it's my husband. I could not get him to drink. I was trying to get him off dairy, and he tried almond milk, didn't like it. So unbeknownst to him, I took his organic milk carton and filled it with cashew milk. We did this for 3 weeks. The man never noticed it. And he just milk every morning in his cereal. And at the end of 3 weeks, I told him he had been drinking plant-based milk, and he couldn't believe it. And I'm like, no, really, Mark? He goes, no, I saw the carton. And it's like, no, Mark, I was pouring it out and putting it in. So anyway, but what I want to say is, you know what? If somebody where you don't like one plant-based milk, try a different one, because different people have different tastes. They're all made up a little bit differently, and honestly, I think you can probably find one, that you'll like. Same thing. His last thing I'm trying to get him off of is yogurt, which now there's plenty of plant-based yogurts. They're sold at Kroger's. They're sold all over. Again, you don't want to watch the additives and any other sugars and stuff. But again, like Betsy said, my whole goal is just to get him off the dairy first. So little steps, I just want to thank everybody for coming. If you want to make sure you get notice of whether we do cooking classes, whether we do presentations or whatever, it is on Facebook. Our regular meeting place is in Clifton at the Seventh-day Adventist Church. We do love to have potlucks because we like to share the food and the recipes. Again, Facebook, and what I also did was I just started doing emails. So if you want to make sure, if you're not on Facebook and you want to make sure you're on the list, just see me afterwards and I'll make sure I have your email address. If you didn't get an email, we'll do that in the future also. So anyway, thank you very much, and we'll both be around for a while. So enjoy, and thank you again very much for coming. Thanks. Oh, I forgot one last thing. They would like us to get a picture of the group and our sign and stuff. So we'll do that now, if you guys don't mind, real quick before Betsy has to go and get a group picture. Thank you.